Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Hey, folks, today's Friday, October 13, 2023. Coming up, Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the voters in Louisiana. Go to the polls tomorrow. They could be electing the first black governor in Louisiana history. We'll talk to activist Gary Chambers to get a sense of black voter turnout. Also, police in Baltimore making arrests in connection with the shooting a couple weeks ago at Morgan State University. Also, on today's show, a judge refuses to rule on the expansive Georgia election voter suppression law. We'll give you those details. Also, in exclusive, a black Texas man who was tased by police had his arrest thrown out. We'll give you those details as well. Plus, Republicans, can they actually figure out how to elect a Speaker of the House? Who's the latest? Crazy Jim Jordan. We'll tell you all about it. It is time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Some major elections are taking place all across the country. Tomorrow in Louisiana, voters go to the polls to choose their next governor. The African-American who's running, Dr. Sean Wilson, polls show he is operating second place to Attorney General Jeff Landry. But what is black voter turnout in Louisiana? Activist Gary Chambers Jr. joins us right now. Gary, always glad to have you on the show. You broke down the numbers more than a week ago. What do they look like today?
Well, Roland, thank you for having me and having this discussion. We are looking like about 26% of the turnout overall was black voters in early voting, which is higher than what it was in 2019 when John Bell Edwards won the governor's race, which says that black voters are paying attention to this election. We need that to be about 34% tomorrow on election day. So we need people to, before they go to Southern and Grambling and Southeastern for homecoming, to get up and go vote for Sean Wilson tomorrow morning, because it really does matter what is going to happen in the future of this state if we get Jeff Landry as our governor.
And look, and not just those HBCU folks. Look, I tell people all the time, you know, there are 247,000 students at the nation's 107 HBCUs. 20% of them are non-black. You got 1.5 million black students at PWIs. So it's a whole bunch of black folks who are going to, let's see, you know, LSU, going to Tulane, going to all of these other universities, people who don't even went to college out there. And I keep saying to black folks, if we push our numbers to 50, 60, 70, 75%, we can decide the whole election.
That's it. That's it. Because black people make up 34% of the state of Louisiana. We have 900,000 registered black voters in this state. And if those black voters activate tomorrow, we will send Sean Wilson to a runoff with Jeff Landry. And he is in a position to be the first black man elected governor in the state of Louisiana since 1972. That person was not elected. They ascended to the office from being lieutenant governor. So there's never been a black person in the second blackest state in America elected governor. And it's not just because he's black. He's the former Secretary of Transportation. He has a PhD. He's a former professor. He knows where the light switches are in the state capitol, and he has a plan for how we make this state safer, stronger, and better for all of the people of the state of Louisiana, not just some.
What are you seeing in terms of on-the-ground voter mobilization? I'll tell you, I put the word out to some people challenging them, and I haven't seen prominent national black leaders going to Louisiana, holding rallies, doing events along those lines, and I even asked a few and didn't get a response from them.
Well, what I'll tell you is the people that represent us on the national level, or who have represented us on the national level, do not make it seem possible for a black person to win. So when people around the country look to Louisiana, they talk to certain voices. We need to change the voices that we're listening to. A black person can win in the state of Louisiana. We need the resources and the mobilization, and we need you to activate the people that you know within this community. We can't reach everybody by ourselves. Everybody has their own sphere of influence, and we should use that sphere of influence to help this brother, not because he's black, but because he's black and qualified, because he has the skill set, the plan, the vision, and the ability to do the job. And so it is a disappointing thing sometimes as somebody who's actively pushing this. You know, last year I ran statewide. I'm not what Sean Wilson is. What is the excuse this year? This black man is the pedigree, has the ethics, has the plan. We should be putting all of our muscle behind him instead of focusing on things that don't impact the livelihoods of American citizens.
You said something that was critical a few moments ago when you said Louisiana, the second blackest state in America. People always talk about Mississippi, but they don't bring up that fact of Louisiana. And as you said, the numbers are there. 900,000 eligible registered black voters. They simply got to be activated. And I know Black Voters Matters out there trying to do their work, but you also got the resources to make it happen.
That's a fact, man. You know, the organizations that do the work here work tirelessly. There's an organization in New Orleans called Voices of the Experienced Vote. They do a great job mobilizing voters around the state. but they need more resources. And the people that are activating and doing this work need more resources. Roland, we didn't have very competitive legislative races this year, so we need the attention to be on these statewide races in order for Sean Wilson to be able to get over the hill. And listen, he's going to make it to a runoff tomorrow night. He's going to get the numbers. Black folks got to show up and do what they got to do tomorrow. I believe that they will get him to a runoff. But November the 18th, we got 30 days to ensure that he becomes the next governor of Louisiana. Otherwise, Louisiana becomes like Florida, like Texas, more radicalized, more against the progress of all people. And we don't need that. Jeff Landry's already suing currently in federal courts to block Black people from getting a second majority-minority district like Alabama just got. The Supreme Court said that we had to do it. And Jeff Landry, while he's running for governor, is fighting from us getting that second Black majority seat.
Well, explain that again for the folk who don't get it, Gary, in terms of what Louisiana will be like under a Jeff Landry as governor.
If Jeff Landry becomes the governor of Louisiana, we can be assured that there are going to be conversations about education that aren't about educating our children. We can be sure that there are going to be conversations about removing books from school. We can be sure that he's going to talk about AP African American Studies, because Jeff Landry is much like one of the last Republicans that we had as our governor. He's going to be focused on trying to be the president of the United States while he's governor. And so the Republican Party is at a point where in order to be the next guy up, you got to be the most radical person in the position that you're in. And Jeff doesn't have a problem with that. He sues over every cockamamie idea that he comes up with that strips away liberties from people, that limits access. This man just sued to try to prevent people from getting health care in the state of Louisiana while he was running for governor. That is not somebody that we want to actually have the ability to have the veto power. Right here in Louisiana, the governor has a power to line item veto. That means the governor can look at anything in the budget and line item veto that out. We need a governor that's going to work against the ideology that is stripping away our liberties, and somebody who's focused on the right things. Jeff's going to waste our time. He's going to waste our tax dollars, and he's going to put us in and make us a laughing stock of the nation. We already ranked number 50, Roland. We don't need to be worse than we are.
A lot of Black people. See, this is the thing for me in terms of how I believe in connecting the dots. It's a whole lot of Black people who come to Louisiana every year for Essence Festival. Essence Festival is not just the largest economic engine in Louisiana, it's the largest live event in the country. And so here's my whole point to Black folks who are all across America. Don't just come down to Louisiana for 3 or 4 days in July and not realize that you can have an impact putting those same type of resources behind the Black guy who's running for governor, and then he's running the whole state. And that's the thing it's the hardest thing for me when they talk about 350, 400,000 people, 450,000 coming, being a part of Essence Festival. Well, guess what? All those Essence Fest folks should be saying, how do we make this brother governor?
Let me tell you why that is significant and why it matters. Essence, like any other festival or any other, the Super Bowl, when those things come, the state incentivizes those things to come. Just recently, in a joint legislative committee, they blocked a healthcare district. The legislature blocked a funding for a healthcare district in New Orleans, okay? Why is that significant? They are working against anything that is happening in New Orleans because they're saying that crime is high. They're not helping address the education issues. They're not helping make the city stronger. They're just saying, we're not going to give you any state dollars for anything in New Orleans if we don't like what your crime plan is, because that's what we have the power to do as a Republican legislature. What do you think is going to happen when the funding for all of these things that are culturally important to Black people are up for the legislative people that are under the thumb of Jeff Landry? They're going to work against New Orleans. They're going to work against Baton Rouge. They're going to work against Shreveport. When you look at the headway that we have made in getting investment into these communities, the resources that Congressman Carter has brought in, the work that's been done over the last 8 years with John Bell as governor, we wouldn't have Medicaid expansion in Louisiana if Black folk didn't elect a Democrat as governor. When John Bell was elected, he was elected with 700,000 votes. Of those 700,000 votes, over 450,000 of them were black people. And so he would not be governor if it were not for a majority black people showing up for him. So we have to have that same energy and tenacity for a black man. And if you are on the national level and you care about these things, if we don't get this man in, some of the things you enjoy, you may not enjoy as much.
Again, it's just trying to get people to understand the stakes. Gary, hold tight 1 second. I'm going to go to a break, come back. My panel's got some questions for you as well. Folks, we're talking about the Louisiana election. It is tomorrow. It is tomorrow. I need everybody who's watching and listening. I need you reaching out to your friends and the family in Louisiana saying, y'all have got to go to the polls. We have got to stop leaving our power at home. Stop going to damn homecomings. Stop going to Essence Festival. Stop going to all these places and shaking your ass, eating food, listening to music, but then we don't turn around and use that same collective action to put people in office. And so we'll be right back right here on Rolling on the Filter on the Black Star Network.
Peace, I'm Faraji Muhammad, host of The Culture. And brothers, we need to talk. There's been much discussion about the state of the black man in our community. Whether it's in politics, education, or in the home, my brothers, we are struggling to lead the way, which is why The Culture will be hosting the Black Men Summit, where we'll be redefining and celebrating black manhood. This special series will kick off on the 28th anniversary of the historic Million Man March on Monday, October the 16th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be talking to some of Black America's most prolific, dynamic, thought-provoking black men activists, scholars, and leaders about our role, our power, and our future. So tune in and join the conversation as an online culture crew member for The Culture's Black Men Summit, redefining and celebrating black manhood. Starting Monday, October 16th through Friday, October 20th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time each day, right here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes, actress, writer, and advocate Ray Dawn Chong is here to discuss her childhood and break down her life in Hollywood, a show you don't want to miss.
Well, even at my peak when I was getting a lot of stuff, as soon as I was working a ton, I heard people whispering, oh, we don't want to pay her because we're giving her a break.
Only on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
On the next A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we meet Ricky Fairley. She was given a death sentence by her doctor 11 years ago. But for Ricky, giving up was not an option. She declared war on her disease, turned her entire life upside down, and won the battle.
I know that God left me here to do this work. And when you talk about faith, faith is what got me through. I mean, I had to relinquish my faith and give my life to God and say, okay, God, what have you got for me? And He gave me my purpose. And that's why I'm here.
Her amazing story of strength, balance, and survival here on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie on Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, you're going to learn about the silver tsunami, which means that 1 million people are turning 65 every day, and they're going to need some kind of care. You're going to meet two sisters whose situation with their own family led them to start a business in this industry, and now they're showing others.
This is our passion, our mission, our purpose, our ministry.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
All change is not growth.
Right.
But thoughtful change is real good fertilizer. And that's what has been so beneficial to us.
But you also were not afraid of the pivot.
Well, and I'm a black woman in business. Come on, I don't care how I dress up. I don't care who I'm speaking with. I don't care what part of the world I am in. I still am a black woman in business. Being afraid of the pivot, being fearful of change is not what got me here. Respectful of change, respectful of pivot, yeah. fearful? No, no.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Farquhar, executive producer of Proud Family.
Bruce Smith, creator and executive producer of The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered. Gary Chambers Jr. is our guest. He's out of Baton Rouge, activist there. We're talking about the Louisiana election tomorrow. African-American voters could play a huge role in the election of the next governor. You've got MAGA Republican Jeff Landry, who's leading in the polls. You got former head of Transportation Secretary in Louisiana, Dr. Sean Wilson, who is running second in the polls. They are positioned to be the two candidates to go to the runoff, taking place on November 18th. Gary, the key is, again, no candidate is going to get a majority of the vote there. And so the top two, because you have a jungle primary in the state, the top two vote getters, they advance to the runoff. And I think part of the problem with not just African Americans, but also your white Democrats across the country, is that they have this attitude, especially these white consultants coming out of D.C., Democratic Governors Association, DSCC, DCCC, DNC, all the different people. They think, you know what, the South is lost. But that's a lie. You lose because, one, you don't run. You lose because you don't put the resources behind. And so if you look at the numbers, there's a pathway to victory if folks, again, would put the dollars where they are needed in order to run ads, hire staff, have GOTV efforts to be on the ground. That's how you do it.
It's absolutely how you do it. I think that when you look at what the investment is, the candidates that are running in Louisiana, are not raising the millions of dollars in comparison to what we saw in Georgia. But what you saw in Georgia is when you make the investment, the possibility of a victory is there. And now there are two Democratic senators from the state of Georgia that are helping save democracy right now. if we didn't invest in that state, then you would not get that turnout in that state. If you make the investment in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, you'll see different outcomes. And as a result, you'll have different democratic outcomes for the people that live within those communities. But we have just abandoned it and then just said, oh, it'll turn around. You know, and Roland, I normally wouldn't do this. I'm just going to call it out. Where is Cedric Richmond right now for Sean Wilson, right? When we talk about the national level, if Biden isn't supporting Sean, if the people at the federal level aren't supporting Sean, it's probably because Cedric Richmond isn't helping create that conversation on a national level for the people of Louisiana, for any black candidate that's running statewide.
Hey, that's a damn good question, and it's also one, again, for the DNC as well. Matt Manning, Civil Rights Attorney at Corpus Christi. Matt, welcome to the show. Your question for Gary.
Yeah, first, good afternoon, brothers. I want to say, Gary, you know, I got to push back on something you said. You said earlier you didn't think you had the right pedigree that Dr. Wilson does, and I think you do, because I think you have broken down the issues here masterfully and spoken very directly in a way our politicians don't these days. So I hope that you continue seeking office, because we need brothers like you in the good fight. My question for you is this. I know John Bel Edwards before did better than a lot of the other, you know, Republican, because he's a Democrat, of course, Republican candidates in Louisiana, and that he won the strongholds that you would expect in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and other places. But what is the polling looking like for Dr. Wilson in the non-metropolitan parts of Louisiana? Where does he have to do particularly well? What parishes to get over the hump when he comes out of this primary?
Well, thank you, brother, and I'm going to keep pushing. I will tell you that Sean is doing great in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Shreveport, but there's still Lafayette Parish, Calcasieu Parish, Evangeline Parish that he's got to do well. He's got to do well in Slidell and Hammond and the areas of central Louisiana, like Rapides Parish, where Alexandria is. He's got to be able to turn out black voters in all of those communities, progressive, forward-thinking white voters in those communities. Up in Monroe, there got a lot of black folks in Monroe, Louisiana. There are places in Louisiana that people have never heard of that are full of black people and full of forward-thinking white folks who want to see things different in this state. There's just not the resources to activate a lot of those people. But where Sean is going and having conversations, people are responding, and I think they're going to show up. And right now, black folks have shown up 1.3% higher than they did in 2019 for John Bel. That's not a whole lot, but that is an encouraging thing, which I hope that more people are going to take it serious and get up in the morning and go vote. Because, you know, if you look at what has happened in Louisiana, you know, John Bel and I have had our share of disagreements, but I recognize that having a Democrat as the governor of the state of Louisiana has saved us from being as radical as other southern states. And I know that we could go even further with somebody like Sean Wilson in the governor's office.
And see, you know, before I go to Michael, I think this is, and I normally don't call some of these fools out, but you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. And matter of fact, you know, let me just look right here for a second, because you know what? Let me just do this here. Michael, ask your question. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna throw a name out to get, since Gary throwing names out. I'm gonna ask a name, because it's a lot of people who run their mouths on YouTube and social media about politics, and they real quiet about what's happening in Louisiana. And I got one person I'm gonna ask Gary about in particular. Michael, go ahead.
Hey, Gary, thanks for coming back on. This is extremely important. Earlier, you mentioned the first black governor of Louisiana. You said 1972. I think you meant 1872, PBS Pinchback.
Correct.
Number one.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Number two, last week we had Amari Hosang on from Black Voters Matter. And one of the things I brought up was the Louisiana State Constitution of 1898 and how it's still impacting politics today in Louisiana and impacting the conditions of African Americans. How do you connect the state constitution and the history of that state constitution being put in place to disenfranchise African Americans politically and oppress them? How do you connect that to where African Americans are today?
Brother, Louisiana needs a radical transformation in our state legislature, as well as a constitutional convention once we get a sensible legislature. We haven't had one since the 70s, but we were one of the only states until a few years ago that allowed you to be convicted with 10 out of 12 jurors, right?
It was 9-3 originally. It was 9-3 originally based upon that state constitution. That was something I was going to get to, but go ahead.
And then we have right now so many laws and policies. We still have slavery in the state constitution. We still don't want to take slavery out of the Constitution. We put that on the ballot last year. It didn't pass, right? That we just aren't decent enough right now to just say, you know what, let's take the word slavery out of the state constitution. This is a real issue that a lot of citizens don't recognize on its face, but what the government says on paper matters, because when the government says something, they apply that to your life. And if you don't make them change what that is, then at any point they feel that they can directly or indirectly impose that will upon you.
Right, right. Roland, do you have a question? I just wanted to interject something.
Go ahead.
Okay, so for everybody who doesn't understand, when the Louisiana State Constitution was passed in 1898, it had a clause in there that stated that for many felonies, for you to be convicted, instead of it being a unanimous vote by a jury of 12, it was a 9-3 vote. They did this specifically because if you had, because African Americans could serve on juries based upon that state constitution. They did it to reduce the power. If you had 3 African Americans on that jury, they did it to nullify that vote. So there's a deep history when it comes to these state constitutions. They're directly impacting us today. The more we understand those state constitutions, the more we'll realize why voting strategically matters today and how laws and policies shape every aspect of our lives.
People are still in jail from it right now, brother. There are people who are convicted on 10-2 convictions, 9-3 convictions that should be retried, should have the opportunity for that evidence to be reheard, that are still serving in Angola Penitentiary right now, which is one of the worst penitentiaries in this country and really on the face of this earth, because it's just a terrible place.
Yeah, it was built on the land that was a former slave plantation. That's where it gets its name from. The majority of those slaves came from Angola. That's where it gets its name from.
All right, then. So I'm going to do this. No, again, normally I ignore the simple Simons, Gary, but this is a Louisiana race, and so I'm just curious. Have you seen or heard that loudmouth ass Jason Black? Who's in Louisiana, who's always go to my YouTube page, because like last year, this little idiot did this thing called Pull Up Summer 2022, which was pretty stupid because he claims that I was running from him at Essence Fest, and he's so irrelevant, the fool don't even know I was there the whole time, and he couldn't even get credentials, but I was all over the place. But it's interesting, I see him, I don't see nothing on here about Louisiana gubernatorial race. Nothing. So I get a kick out of these people who love talking black, who love talking about what black folks should do, who love talking about what other black people should be saying and not saying. And he's sitting there in Louisiana, ain't saying nothing about the black guy running for governor, but I'm sure he probably gonna try to call him a sellout like he tried to call you one and everybody else. But I purposely just believe in calling these folks out, because what they do is talk trash on YouTube, but do nothing to actually help black people. And if you black and listen to that fool, you stuck on stupid too.
You know, Roland, we have a real problem with figuring out how do we collectively advance our people. And a portion of that problem is that some of us speak so much against black progress that we don't contribute anything other than that to black progress, which is not a contribution of any value, to be honest. We have a real opportunity where we can turn things out. And my struggle with all of the people who kick back, and this is for the foundational black Americans who say that we should not push some of these candidates, you got to get somebody in there to move your agenda. Yep. And if you can't convince people that your agenda is important, you've got to build a bridge big enough, a boat big enough that you can cross the river of struggle. Because black folk tired of struggling. They tired of sitting in conditions and communities that are not working. And the way that we advance that is by putting people who share the majority of our views in office so that we can get things done. And then if those people are not doing what we want, we don't put them there again. But I didn't see many people that were running for the U.S. Senate last year that had a majority black staff, that paid majority of black people with the resources that they raised, $1.3 million, that kept reparations as a part of their platform, and I still was not getting the support of those people. So it's almost like when you're black and you're running, are you ever good enough for black people sometimes? Because you say, I'm not gonna vote for them just because they black. When they black and they got a college degree and a PhD, you got a problem with that. When they black and they are activists and they are advocates, you got a problem with that. The question is the white man's ice cold?
And again, since I'm just gone ahead in there, same thing, loudmouth Vicky Dillard. All they do is run their mouth. And again, you got black folks who run it. This is for the governor of Louisiana, second blackest state. On here, I see her talking about Kamala Harris, dogging Joe Biden, saying Clyburn sold us out, saying DNC chairman flees if the black Americans confront him, all this sort of stuff. I don't see nothing on here about the brother who's running for governor. And so all I'm saying to all of these so-called super black people, where you at? Because see, you can't keep saying you want this, this, this. To your point, Gary, well, who's gonna do it? So let's be real clear. We know what Jeff Landry not gonna do. We know exactly what he is going to do that's going to be oppressive to black folks there in Louisiana. And so, yeah, I'm purposely name calling all these folks who run their mouths. They love doing videos about me, but it's amazing when it's time to put the metal to the pedal. It's time to really get going, time to actually get folks elected who can speak to our interests. Ooh, they MIA. They in the witness protection program.
Don't work for us, man.
So that's why I tell folk, if y'all waste your time listening and following any of them, tell me what are they actually doing to advance the cause of black folks. Because guess what? If you're not in power, you can't do anything. Sitting on the curb, chirping and yelling on YouTube does nothing. Are you mobilizing and organizing? Are you helping to raise money? Are you telling people to create phone banks? That's all I'm saying. What are you actually doing? And if you're not doing anything, then you ain't doing nothing for the actual liberation of black people except just run your mouth. Pull it up, folks. The voting tomorrow in Louisiana, y'all. Polls in Louisiana open tomorrow at 7 a.m. They close 8 p.m. Central. Get your vote in. Don't sit here and go watch college football or go watch baseball or go sit here and go to barbecues and go partying or whatever. Make sure you vote. Voting is our power. And again, if Wilson advances to the runoff, we come right back on November 18th, but none of that happens if we do not vote. Gary Chambers, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, brother.
All right, folks, we gotta go to the break. We come back, we'll talk about what's happening in Georgia. Again, why do they constantly attack our voting rights? Because they know the power of our vote. We'll discuss that next, what's going on in Georgia, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Peace, I'm Faraji Muhammad, host of The Culture. And brothers, we need to talk. There's been much discussion about the state of the black man in our community. Whether it's in politics, education, or in the home, my brothers, we are struggling to lead the way, which is why The Culture will be hosting the Black Men Summit, where we'll be redefining and celebrating black manhood. This special series will kick off on the 28th anniversary of the historic Million Man March on Monday, October the 16th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be talking to some of Black America's most prolific, dynamic, thought-provoking black men activists, scholars, and leaders about our role, our power, and our future. So tune in and join the conversation as an online culture crew member for the Culture's Black Men Summit, redefining and celebrating Black manhood. Starting Monday, October 16th through Friday, October 20th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time each day, right here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes, actress, writer, and advocate Ray Dawn Chong is here to discuss her childhood and break down her life in Hollywood, a show you don't want to miss.
Well, even at my peak when I was getting a lot of stuff, as soon as I was working a ton, I heard people whispering, oh, we don't want to pay her because we're giving her a break.
Only on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show.
This is your boy, Earthquake.
And you're tuned in to
Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. We have done so many stories, y'all, here about the constant attack on voting rights in this country. And not just the attack on black folks, the attack on young white voters, what's going on, Latinos and others. We see this happening all across this country, and we see this happening a lot in Georgia. In Georgia, a federal judge has declined to block several provisions of a recently passed law in Georgia, while there are various legal challenges to it. Now, you often see this, folks, where they will say, well, while these cases are going forward or appeals are being happening, then we're not going to stop things. We saw the same thing happen with the congressional districts. Even when the Supreme Court allowed these illegal districts to move forward, saying there wasn't enough time to redraw these lines. But the problem for the folks who are living there is that they're having to still abide by these restrictions that were passed 2 years ago in Georgia. Now, several groups are challenging what is called Senate Bill 202, claiming the new law is going to make it harder for blacks to vote in Georgia. But again, the judge ruled the plaintiffs failed to prove the legislation is intended to discriminate against voters based upon race. Provisions issue include limits on the number of absentee ballot drop boxes, an ID requirement for voters casting absentee ballots, a ban on volunteers providing food and water to voters waiting in line at the polls. Joining me is Caitlin May, a voting rights staff attorney at the ACLU of Georgia, coming out of Atlanta. Caitlin, glad to have you here. So here's this whole deal. Oh, well, we can't show that it's targeting people because of their race. Well, then, all of a sudden the laws are created. All of a sudden, I wonder why. Is it because you had this massive increase in black voter turnout? And this is the problem that we have with a lot of these judges, where they want to say, oh, no, but you got to show like this exact evidence that it was directly because they are black.
That's right. Yeah. And thank you for having me. So Senate Bill 202, what we often call Georgia's anti-voter law, was passed in 2021, as you said, after a huge influx of turnout, even amidst COVID. And SB 202 was passed in response to a fear of voter fraud. And it's important that I say a fear of voter fraud, because the advocates of this bill are not pointing to actual cases of voter fraud. They are pointing to election deniers who are afraid of that happening. Voter fraud in Georgia is not a large problem. Voter access in Georgia has always been and continues to be a huge problem. In this case, SB 202 made a lot of changes to our election code, and almost all of those changes made it harder for Georgians to access their right to vote, but in particular made it harder for Black Georgians and Georgians with disabilities to access.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So in this case, we moved for a preliminary injunction. Unfortunately, we just received word that the judge did not grant our preliminary injunction. So this is just a preliminary order. As you know, gone are the days when the legislators openly say we're passing this bill so that Black Georgians cannot vote. But that doesn't mean that these tactics are not targeted towards the methods of voting that Black Georgians use and voters with disabilities use. And so, as I said, this is just a preliminary ruling. We are still going to fight about this in the court and in the legislature, and we're going to continue to prepare for trial.
You know, one of the things that that we talk about this stuff a lot on this show, and I don't think the people out there really understand the battles that are taking place in courtrooms nationwide. I mean, literally, law being passed, lawsuit filed, law being passed in North Carolina, lawsuit filed, law passed in Florida, lawsuit filed. I mean, it's like, what we're talking about here is exactly what we saw during the Jim Crow days after the Brown versus Board of Education.
Yeah, it's like a hydra with many heads. As soon as you get a ruling on one issue, then there's another bill that's going to pop up. And like you said, it's all over the country. It's particularly all over the South. And SB 202 is a particularly egregious example because it was an omnibus election bill. It touched every part of our election code and made things harder for voters and made things harder for local county election administrators.
Questions from the panel. Michael, you first.
All right. Thanks for coming on today. When we look at some of the history of Georgia, we, in addition to this voter suppression, we look at things like the statewide runoff election rule that was championed by Denmark Groover, who was a white supremacist segregationist member of the state legislature in 1963. How do you, when we talk to especially African Americans about what's going on in Georgia and the voter suppression, how do we connect bills like this to a history of voter suppression in Georgia?
Yeah, I think any time that you have seen Black political power grow across the South, and particularly in Georgia, you've seen a reaction to that relatively quickly. And as I said, how open the legislature is about the reasons for that reaction has, changed over time. But we have expert testimony or expert reports that show that the methods that are targeted by laws like SB 202 are things like absentee voting. And those methods are used in particular by Georgians of color, Black Georgians, Latino Georgians, and Georgians with disabilities. And of course, youth voters as well. So This is part of a long line of cases where the legislature restricts access to the ballot in reaction to Black Georgians turning out and exercising their right to vote. Unfortunately, this negative ruling for us is also part of a long history in Georgia. Black Georgians have shown for decades that they are willing to overcome many obstacles put in the way of their right to vote. And just because they are willing to overcome those obstacles and still have great turnout doesn't mean that those obstacles should be allowed to exist.
Matt?
Thank you.
Yeah, Caitlin, I have two questions, one of which is kind of a wonky lawyer question, so excuse me for that in advance. But I guess the two questions I have are first, as it relates to the provisional ballots. I saw that there is a prohibition on a provisional ballot that is cast in the wrong place. And I wanted to know how kind of you guys are framing that, because that seems to me to be pretty clearly violative if somebody goes through the checks at the appropriate place, casts the ballot, and they end up being in the wrong place. It seems like that's not their fault. That's the election administrator's fault. And I kind of want to see your position on that. And then the second question is, how are y'all handling the messaging? Because the difficult part of this seems like you almost need fewer Black people to show up in order to show there is, in fact, a disparate impact, but you can't, publicly advocate for that. So how are y'all handling the messaging part of this as it relates to the lawsuit?
Sure. Yeah. So as to your first question, that is the out-of-precinct voters. That is one of the many provisions of SB 202 that we are challenging. So that is unfortunately one of the provisions that we had hoped to have eliminated temporarily for the 2024 elections while we wait for trial. Unfortunately, that was not the result that we got, but we will continue to fight for that and hopefully have a long-term solution that changes that law back to what it was and allows people to cast a provisional ballot at any time of day. SB 202 changed that law to only being after 5 p.m., so 5 to 7 p.m. on Election Day. And as to your second point, that's exactly right. Of course, we would never use any kind of messaging to ask people not to show up to vote. We always want high voter turnout. And Georgians have really turned out in the past couple of years, despite these restrictions on their access to the ballot. But, you know, we just have to show the judge that just because people are willing to go to great lengths to exercise their right to vote doesn't mean that the restrictions are not unnecessarily hindering that access, and doesn't mean that those laws are just. So we have a coordinated, we call it integrated advocacy. We have a great policy and communications team. So all of us work together to simultaneously try to make sure individual Georgians are able to access their right to vote and do turn out to exercise their right to vote, but also challenging these laws so that in the future and long term, that's an easy thing to do, because it's not right now for many Georgians.
All right, then. Well, keep up the good fight, Kaylin. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to show you an ad that the Republican is running against one of the brothers who we talked to this week in Virginia. That is pretty shameful. They've darkened the ad, and they're using the typical week on crime. Wait till we show you this sheer stupidity and what's happening in Virginia. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. You too, folks, hit that like button, y'all. And your support, what we do is critical, so please contribute to our Brina Funk fan club. Your dollars make it possible for us to do what we do. Send your check and money order. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And of course, be sure to download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. And be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, The Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores nationwide. We'll be back in a moment.
All change is not growth.
Right.
But thoughtful change is real good fertilizer. And that's what has been so beneficial to us.
But you also were not afraid of the pivot.
Well, and I'm a black woman in business. Come on, I don't care how I dress up. I don't care who I'm speaking with. I don't care what part of the world I am in. I still am a black woman in business. Being afraid of the pivot, being fearful of change is not what got me here. Respectful of change. Respectful of pivot, yeah. Fearful? No, no.
On the next A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we meet Ricky Fairley. She was given a death sentence by her doctor 11 years ago. But for Ricky, giving up was not an option. She declared war on her disease, turned her entire life upside down, and won the battle.
I know that God left me here to do this work. And when you talk about faith, faith is what got me through. I mean, I had to relinquish my faith and give my life to God and say, okay, God, what have you got for me? And He gave me my purpose. And that's why I'm here.
Her amazing story of strength, balance, and survival here on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie on Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hello, I'm Jamia Pugh. I am from Coatesville, Pennsylvania, just an hour right outside of Philadelphia.
My name is Jasmine Pugh. I'm also from Coatesville, Pennsylvania.
You are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay right here.
right, folks, Monday, we were in Virginia Beach with several candidates who are running for the Virginia House with one of our Get Out to Vote events, opportunity for people to learn more about the candidates. And one of those candidates was Michael Fagans. He served in the military, raised by a teacher. And so just so you understand the games that people play, I mean, here's somebody who literally put the uniform on to fight on behalf of this country. And his Republican opponent, Karen Greenlaw. Let me show you this despicable ad that she put out, attacking him, lying about his record, but then also darkening the video as well. All right, y'all, play it.
Michael Fagans is endorsed by radicals who want to defund our police and release murderers and rapists from prison. Fagans even implied cops are worse than terrorists. Karen Greenhall is endorsed by Virginia law enforcement.
I know nothing's more important than keeping our communities safe. As your delegate, I supported pay raises for law enforcement and voted for legislation to put violent criminals behind bars. I'm Karen Greenhall, candidate for delegate, and my campaign sponsored this ad.
First of all, who is the shameful brother in her spot, standing there? Now, I want y'all to go back to this here, because I'm going to show y'all what happens when these people put these kind of ads out. And I'm going to show y'all how they lie, okay? So go ahead and play it, and then I'm going to tell you to freeze it, okay? Go ahead.
Michael Fagans is endorsed by radicals who want to defund our police and release murderers.
Stop right there. Okay, so here's the first thing. Michael Fagans wants to, so go back, bring it back. So they got a picture of him in his Alpha blazer and tie, saying he wants to defund our police. You see, there's nothing to back it up. No facts whatsoever. Nothing. They're not quoting anywhere. They're not showing anything. They're not citing any source. Then they go to the next one. Go ahead.
Endorsed by radicals who want to defund our police and release murderers and rapists.
Stop right there. Okay, he wants to release murderers and rapists. So you see somebody in a hoodie. Okay, here's the deal again. No citation, no nothing. Oh, the black man wants to see him release murderers and rapists. Okay, then this is the one that's hilarious. Go to the next one.
Fagans even implied cops are worse than terrorists.
Stop right there. Oh, Fagan has implied that cops are worse than terrorists, and you see they use an image of a black female cop. This is the trash, Matt Manning, that we often see by these Republican candidates, and they can't back it up, but people wonder. These are the scare tactics to scare white voters, saying, don't vote for the black boogeyman.
From the same people who are the first one to beat the drum about somebody being a veteran or, doing their service for the country, right? I mean, it's because he's a black man. And when it's advantageous for their position for him to be black and the boogeyman, he's the black boogeyman. When it's advantageous for him to be a veteran and a hero, then he's a veteran and a hero. And that kind of cognitive dissonance is exactly what you see across the political spectrum, but particularly from Republicans and particularly as it relates to black people. And I think it's shameful because they know there's no accountability for it. That's really the biggest issue here. Both sides of the aisle play political games. We'd be dishonest if we didn't say that. But what I find in situations like this is that nobody's ever going to call them out on it. I mean, release murderers and rapists. I don't know the policy point behind that, but I suspect he's a proponent of some kind of bail measure, right? Which, if you believe in the Constitution, you have to believe in, because the Constitution affords you that right. But that's not what the voters want to hear, unfortunately, and that's not what they feel they need to tell them. Instead, you put a black man on the screen and you put in big, bold font, release murderers and rapists, and it becomes, I don't want to vote for that guy because he's, lawless. He's for lawlessness despite having fought for the country. So that kind of cognitive dissonance and dishonesty has absolutely no accountability. Nothing happens for doing that, and that's why you see it there. And in places like here in Texas, some of the political ads I've seen are insane, and they're among the same kind of vitriol and a lot of the same xenophobic vitriol. For instance, with immigrants, Dan Patrick and others have had some ads that painted like every person who is an immigrant is inherently lawless and
For the folks who don't know, Dan Patrick is Lieutenant Governor of Texas. Go ahead.
Well, and we know that that isn't true. I mean, we know that the data doesn't bear that out. And we know that what that is both fear and race mongering, intending to play to the fears of predominantly white people who are afraid of a country slipping out of their grasp that is long ago slipped out of their grasp. So this is part and parcel with that kind of messaging. And the sad reality is there's no accountability for it, which is why we continue to see it.
Michael?
Yeah, you know, Roland, this is reminiscent of the Willie Horton ads from 1988, the presidential race between George H.W. Bush and Mike Dukakis, who was the governor of Minnesota. And the reason why Republicans keep doing things like this and playing this old playbook, playing this old game from their playbook and prey on the fears of especially white suburbanites is because oftentimes it works. We saw it work when Senator Ron Johnson ran re-election against Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin, and they darkened, if I remember correctly, in the campaign ad that was for Senator Ron Johnson, they had a darkened picture of Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. They talk about defund the police, which is why when that phrase first came out, I understand the sentiment, but I said as somebody that has a background in marketing, that's one of the dumbest ass slogans I've ever heard. It's going to come back to bite you in the behind, and it has time after time after time. What we have to do is outflank Republicans. We know the playbook they're going to come with. We need to outflank them and talk about how, yes, you're for upholding law, but you're also for being fair. You're also for taking a holistic approach to policing. And hopefully Michael Fagans comes back and hits hard with facts and evidence, because it appears that they're manufacturing a lot of things against him.
Yep, of course.
To prey on the fears of white people as well, who will most likely be oppressed by the Republican candidate if he wins.
Indeed. Speaking of the Republicans, looks like in the House they've decided, or guess they're going to move forward with Jim Jordan as their speaker designee. Let's see if we get to 18 votes. It did not take long for House Democratic Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries to rip into this. Jim Jordan is literally one of the most pathetic individuals who's in Congress. And man, Jeffries did not waste any syllables in describing him.
House Republicans have selected as their nominee to be the Speaker of the People's House the chairman of the Chaos Caucus, a defender in a dangerous way of dysfunction, and an extremist extraordinaire. When we had a narrow majority under the last Congress, led by Speaker Pelosi in partnership with Senate Democrats under the leadership of President Joe Biden, we were able to pass bills to make a difference in the lives of the American people. House Democrats passed legislation to save the economy through the American Rescue Plan by putting shots in arms, money in pockets, and kids back in school, and allow America to be reopened as the strongest economy of any in the developed world. House Democrats were able to pass the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to fix our crumbling bridges, roads, tunnels, airports, our sewer and water systems, our mass transportation systems, and to ensure that there was high-speed internet access and clean water in every community. House Democrats, with our majority, were able to pass gun safety legislation for the first time in 30 years that will save lives. House Democrats were able to pass legislation to stand up for our veterans who were exposed to toxic substances, Agent Orange, and things to undermine their health, their safety, and well-being, and to provide millions of veterans with the health care they need to live the lives that they deserve. House Democrats were able to pass the CHIPS and Science Act to bring domestic manufacturing jobs back home to the United States of America. And House Democrats were able to pass the Inflation Reduction Act to strike a dramatic blow against the climate crisis, set our planet on a sustainable trajectory forward, lower energy costs, strengthen the Affordable Care Act, lower health care costs, and drive down the high price of life-saving prescription drugs for millions of Americans, including dropping the price of insulin from thousands of dollars a year to $35 a month for millions of Americans. That is the track record legislative accomplishment under a House Democratic majority. House Republicans have just elected a Speaker nominee who in 16 years in this Congress hasn't passed a single bill because his focus has not been on the American people. His focus has been on peddling lies and conspiracy theories and driving division amongst the American people. House Republicans now have a choice. There are only two paths forward. On the one hand, House Republicans can continue to triple down on the chaos, the dysfunction, and the extremism that has been visited upon the American people as a result of the House Republican Civil War. On the other hand, traditional Republicans can break away from the extremism, partner with Democrats on an enlightened bipartisan path forward so we can end the recklessness and get back to doing the business of the American people. And Democrats are ready, willing, and able to get that done.
Well, I must say, Mike, they really have picked an idiot if they're going to go forward with Jim Jordan.
A stone cold idiot. Jim Jordan is one of the dumbest people in the House, in the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives. He gets absolutely nothing done except to push the MAGA agenda, except to push the extreme right Freedom Caucus agenda. So I've been following this closely. We've been discussing this on the African History Network show, and Jim Jordan got 124 votes in the to be the Republican choice, 124 to 81 for Scott, who was the challenger. So it's not clear he's going to get. From what I'm seeing, they need 217 now instead of 218. So they must be a House of Representatives person short. It's not clear he's going to be able to get to 217. But what really needs to happen is Hakeem Jeffries and Democrats need to go to some of those Republicans who in 2022 midterm elections won seats in districts that Joe Biden won, go to 6 to 8 of them and cut a deal for them to support Hakeem Jeffries to be the speaker, some type of power sharing deals, whatever it is. There've been power sharing deals in the past, because we can't have a Jim Jordan as speaker. Nothing's going to get accomplished. They're going to launch more nonsensical investigations. And lastly, it's important for people to understand that continuing resolution that just passed maybe a couple weeks ago, right, to keep the government open, that expires November 17th. We're going to be right back in.
Got to do another deal. Got to do another deal.
Do another deal.
Hey, the Republican Accountability Project put out this video, Matt, which is all Republicans talking about this idiot Jim Jordan. Watch this.
Jim Jordan lied about the 2020 election.
Then they added fraud on top of it, and that's why President Trump wasn't elected president.
It was that lie that caused the insurrection at the Capitol.
I don't know how you can ever convince me that President Trump didn't actually win this thing.
They knew President Trump was going to win on election night, but they wanted to keep looking for and finding and counting ballots.
He almost destroyed our democracy.
Got 11 million more votes than he did in 2016, but somehow the guy who never left his house wins the election.
Jim Jordan should never be the Speaker of the House.
So they want to lead with election denier. Boy, that's leadership.
You know, I don't know, Roland. I don't know. Maybe I'm not understanding fully the contours of this, but I think this could actually be a good thing to this extent. Jim Jordan is an idiot, and Jim Jordan is a Trump proxy. But as we saw with McCarthy, this is the worst time to want this job, right? He had to give up so many concessions that we're talking about how he was the first Speaker of the House ousted in history. So I think perhaps there's a chance if Jim Jordan gets elected, yes, things will grind to an even worse halt, but that civil war will, basically render him ineffective. I mean, it might be an Icarus situation or a clipped wing situation, if you will, where he becomes a Speaker of the House. He tries that, mess where he's grinding the government to a halt, and before we know it, he's gone. And he's not only gone, but he has been rendered ineffective. That might be a little naive take on it, but when I saw that he was in the running for it, I thought they're insane, number one. And number two, if I were him, I wouldn't want this job. And the reason is I think him, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and a few others have tried to really make their political hay by being the, anti-establishment, against everything type of people. But to be the Speaker of the House, you have to effectively work with the other side, which in this instance is going to cut his legs out from under him, and the Jim Jordan show will lose a lot of its effect. So I'm not hoping he becomes Speaker of the House, but if he does become the Speaker of the House, I think his ineffectiveness there may render him ineffective going forward. But that could also be a naive take. I'm not sure.
Lord, the Jim Jordan show is going to be a truly shit show. All right, y'all, got to go to break. We come back. We'll talk about this exclusive story out of Texas. Black man who had been tased by cops. Guess what? Charges dropped. Amazing what happened when that video comes out, huh? All right, folks, we'll be back right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, you're going to learn about the silver tsunami, which means that 1 million people are turning 65 every day, and they're going to need some kind of care. You're going to meet two sisters whose situation with their own family led them to start a business in this industry, and now they're showing others.
This is our passion, our mission, our purpose, our ministry.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
Peace, I'm Faraji Muhammad, host of The Culture. And brothers, we need to talk. There's been much discussion about the state of the black man in our community, whether it's in politics, education, or in the home. My brothers, we are struggling to lead the way, which is why The Culture will be hosting the Black Men Summit, where we'll be redefining and celebrating black manhood. This special series will kick off on the 28th anniversary of the historic Million Man March on Monday, October the 16th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be talking to some of Black America's most prolific, dynamic, thought-provoking black men activists, scholars, and leaders about our role, our power, and our future. So tune in and join the conversation as an online culture crew member for The Culture's Black Men Summit, redefining and celebrating black manhood. Starting Monday, October 16th through Friday, October 20th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time each day, right here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Marissa Mitchell, a news anchor at Fox 5 DC.
Hey, what's up? It's Tammy Roman, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, the battle over district lines in Texas continues in Galveston County. The Texas Civil Rights Project, they are hailing a victory there. They tweeted out, we won our lawsuit against Galveston County. Today's win strikes down the 2021 Galveston County redistricting map drawn in a way that discriminated against the county's black and Latino citizens. Galveston County has been ordered to redraw the map by October 20th. They lay out who they worked in tandem with. Racial gerrymandering is not a new tactic. It impacts voters of color every election cycle. And this case proves that voters will not sit idly by while politicians aim to diminish their power. That's Joaquin Gonzalez. And so congratulations to the Texas Civil Rights Project. Speaking of Texas, folks, we have an update on a story that we previously talked about. The arrest of a Texas man who was tased in an ambulance following a seizure by Killeen Police, well, has been suppressed. Interesting. Now, Matt is one of Truman McCollum Jr.'s attorneys, and We talked about the federal lawsuit filed against 3 police officers and the city alleging that his civil rights were violated. On January 16, 2021, Truman suffered a medical emergency in a Burger King parking lot, causing him to hit another vehicle on January 16, 2021. He was not responsive when he was removed from his car. He was then taken to an ambulance. The body cam video provided to us by his attorneys shows Truman being tased multiple times in the ambulance and again when they moved him to the police car. Yeah, folks. You see here the officers. They are, first of all, we got a couple of people here. Matt is here, of course. We also have Rawls Williams with us as well to explain what in the heck going on here. So glad to have both of you out here. So, all right. So we had body cam footage before, Matt. Now we have a different camera here. And the defense that they gave beforehand, that seems to fly out the window.
Yeah, it does. So to make it clear, Roland, I'm one of Truman's 2 attorneys. My co-counsel, Rossi Williams, is obviously here. And one of the parts of this that we probably didn't flesh out the first time is that Truman is also facing criminal charges. So I represent him on those criminal charges. And pretty early on in this case, I recognized that there was a serious legal issue as it relates to the probable cause where the police officers arrested him. So I filed a motion to suppress. I went up and argued it. They put one of the defendants in the federal civil rights case on the stand. I ate him alive. The judge agreed with me. There is not probable cause to arrest him here for anything that he got charged for. So she issued an order granting our motion to suppress, which means that everything in the criminal case is dead, essentially. So now the state is intending to appeal it. They haven't filed their brief on time. I think they're appealing it because they're salty that we won. But where we are now is that we are focused solely on the civil rights case going forward.
This is just, it's still interesting him, Rosie, as we looked at this whole deal, that they're trying to defend this when it's utterly illogical that a man was in an ambulance. And everything that we see, it wasn't like he was attacking anybody. They just decided, what the hell, we're gonna tase him.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us on the show. I've been enjoying it tremendously tonight. But whenever you're dealing with that thin blue line and it comes to Black people, we're not walking around happily singing, I got Georgia on my mind. Because those cops who are racist, they're out to take us out each and every time. So in relation to Truman, it's important also not just to note that he was inside an ambulance, but to note that he had a seizure. He literally had a seizure in the drive-thru of the Burger King. And that is what caused his car to go forward into the car in front of him. And that is what caused the Burger King employee to call 911 for medical assistance for someone whom he witnessed have a seizure. So when you just showed that body-worn camera of the Killeen PD tasing Truman inside the ambulance, Truman is still coming out of the seizure. He has no idea he's inside of an ambulance. When they removed him from the car, he was literally still unresponsive. And so the paramedics placed him inside the ambulance to receive treatment. The police then entered the ambulance and started tasing him. So at no point during this entire process that you see here, this entire injustice, does Truman even know what's going on? And even later, the police, in their own write-ups, admitted to that he was incoherent. He didn't know who we were. He didn't know we were police. Yet time and time again, this is what we see them doing.
So again, Matt, for the folks who missed it, so what's the next step?
So there are really two next steps. As it relates to the criminal charges, again, we triumphed in our motion to suppress, so the arrests are dead. There's not anything really there to prosecute, but the state has filed a notice of appeal, which means they want to fight what we did in court. Thinking preventively, recognized what they were likely to do and provided the judge with the law on which she made her ruling, her correct ruling. So we're comfortable with the likely outcome of that. But one, there may be an appellate brief process, and I've hired one of the best appellate lawyers in the state to assist us with that if we do get far down that road. As to the civil rights case, It's basically been on hold as the criminal charges were going through the system. So now it's a matter of litigating the civil rights case. And as you can imagine, both the city and the attorney for the officers, has come out pretty hard, filed their customary motion to dismiss, but we are not concerned. Both Rossi and I do this for a living, and we are built to stand 10 toes down with our client. And really, the issues are on our side. The law is on our side. Morality is on our side. Right is on our side. And we are on Truman's side and ready to stand to fight against all that comes. But that now means we need to continue briefing in federal court, and we'll surely have some oral arguments on the issues. But one of the things that's really primary about this, Roland, is a lot of civil rights cases people don't realize when people have contact with the police, there are a lot of times companion criminal charges. And when those companion criminal charges go the way that they've gone in Truman's case, where it's the police don't have probable cause and it's obvious that their contact with our client was not rooted in the law, then that really strengthens and buttresses our position in the federal civil rights case. So Rossi and I are both heartened by that outcome because we know it's the right outcome and it strengthens our civil rights case. Would you agree with that, Rossi?
I would. And if I may, I want us to make sure we're letting the people know the significance of that fight you led there in the criminal part of the case, because the witnesses, or the witness who was there upon which the judge based this decision, was actually one of the police officers involved in tasing Truman. So the state called in their witness, it was the police officer, and utilizing that evidence of that police officer's testimony, utilizing the evidence entered of the body-worn camera, the judge looked at that and said there was no probable cause for the arrest. When the officers charged Truman from that incident there at Burger King, they charged him with resisting arrest as well as a DUI. So to have your own police officer sit there on the stand and testify, and the judge still say, hey, I heard everything you said, but there was no probable cause. That's very powerful. The other thing I'd like to say very quickly is usually at this point, what you see is the prosecution dropping the charges because there's no probable cause. But as Attorney Manning pointed out, in this case, they're still trying, but they even missed the deadline to file their appeal. So right is on our side, the law is on our side, and we have to continue this fight. I get very, very passionate in doing these, but in this situation, I will say very quickly, Truman is not only my client, Truman is my brother. We have the same mother. I mean, biologically. I know sometimes people say brother by another mother. No, this is my brother by my real mother, Rossi D. McCollum. And so I stand more than 10 toes down. I got my 10 toes, your 10 toes, and everybody else's 10 toes, because we come to hold them accountable. This has to stop. And we're the people.
All right. We appreciate it. Keep us updated. Thanks a lot. All right, folks. Gotta go to a break. We come back. Police in Baltimore making arrests in the shooting at Morgan State. We'll tell you about that next. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, folks. We easily want to hit 2,000 likes on today's show. Also, support us in what we do. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, The Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available bookstores nationwide. Don't forget, download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Be sure to watch our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week streaming channel, available on Amazon News. Simply go to Amazon Fire and go to Amazon News. You can also tell Alexa, play news for the Black Star Network. Watch us on Plex TV, Amazon Freevee, as well as the live channel grid on Amazon Prime Video. And shout out to the folks who contribute to our Bring the Funk campaign: Anthony Lawson, D. Wash, Tyrone Rico Davis, also Lois Besley, Priscilla Smith, Roxana DeShong, Keith Simmons, Jimmy Thorne, D. Wash, Nichelle Dent, Damon Porter, Elbert Fulgham, Anthony Lawson. Let's see here. We also have Alicia Davis, Jamal Worley, Tommy Williams, Josephine Turner, Mark Abrams, Jerome, Marvina Jackson, Wanda Macon, Thaddeus, We have Rongella Redmond, and let's see here, TYWS, Carletha Brown, Darhill Johnson, Donald White, Preston, Corey Jackson, Aisha Holloman, Monty, Ava Walcott, Patricia Wilson, Anthony Glover, Stacy Robinson, Jesse Jackson, Keith Young, Bia 2377, Terry Jones, Robert Davis, let's see, Curtis Roofer, Cornelius Antwine, Portia Anderson, Michael Potts, Exodus Real Estate Holdings, LLC, Hubert Murphy Jr., Andre Hollins. Thanks a bunch.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance.
We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Next on The Frequency with me, Dee Barnes, actress, writer, and advocate Ray Dawn Chong is here to discuss her childhood and break down her life in Hollywood, a show you don't want to miss.
Well, even at my peak when I was getting a lot of stuff, as soon as I was working a ton, I heard people whispering, oh, we don't want to pay her because we're giving her a break.
Only on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Coles.
Hey, I'm Donnie Simpson.
Yo, it's your man Dion Cole from Blackish, and you watch
Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
Richard Brownlee IV has been missing from his Cairo, Illinois home since July 13th. A 33-year-old is 6 feet, 3 inches tall, weighs 240 pounds with black hair and brown eyes. Richards was last seen driving his black 2010 Chevy Aveo with Illinois tags DE 33808. Anyone with information about Richard Brownlee IV is urged to call the Alexander County, Illinois Sheriff's Department at 618-734-2141, 618-734-2141. Folks, the Baltimore Police Department has one suspect in custody in the shooting that took place, the mass shooting that took place at Morgan State University. They also issued a warning for the second suspect, who's still at large. Police have arrested a 17-year-old man on attempted murder charges in Washington, D.C. They have issued an arrest warrant for 18-year-old Javon Williams for attempted murder. He is considered armed and dangerous. Authorities were able to identify Williams and the other juveniles through surveillance footage. There's a $9,000 reward for information leading to Williams' arrest. During a campus town hall about the incident, President David Wilson said they plan to build a wall around 90% of the Baltimore campus and effectively eliminate unfettered access. In addition to the wall, other potential upgrades include installing more metal detectors in campus buildings, exploring weapons detection technology, increasing police patrols, and building additional security guard booths. The cost for all of this will be about $22 million. And so there's been a mixed reaction, if you will, to the announcement of this university wall in April. You remember, the university tore down the Spite the Wall, which was constructed in the 1930s and was recognized as a residential segregation barrier for African Americans. You know what, Michael, I understand folks who have some reservations, but here's the deal. The job of the university is to keep the faculty, staff, and students safe. The reality is, I don't care who you are, you simply just, especially where universities are located, you just can't have sort of that open access. And I think that for a lot of people, we just live in different times. I can tell you, I've traveled all around the country. I've gone to various campuses, HBCUs, PWIs, community colleges, and here's the deal: most universities, they're wide open. I mean, you can just look. My alma mater is Texas A&M University. It's literally wide open. You could just walk straight on the campus. It's a massive campus, but that's most universities, and so depending upon where you are, the university's got to keep it safe. And if this means directing people into entrances to get on campus, so be it.
Yeah, and you know, my alma mater, Wayne State University here in Detroit, is an open campus. You know, right in the cultural center, right near the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. You can just walk on campus. So a lot of universities in you know, what we would call urban areas are like that. In this situation here, I can understand them wanting to put back up a wall and needing that for protection, because what people have to understand is parents send their children, even though they're 18 years old, they're, you know, you're always your parents' children, right? Parents send their children to universities with the expectation that the university is going to do basically everything they can to protect their children. So when you have shootings like this, and that creates that sense of you being vulnerable, you not being protected, it can negatively impact enrollment, which impacts dollars. So they're going to have to take precautions, and if they have to erect a wall to contribute to increasing security, then that's what they have to do.
But Matt, guess what? There are fences around Air Force bases, military bases. I mean, we see fences around many facilities.
Yeah, and I don't think that those facilities should be begrudged for basic security considerations.
And they got guns.
I know that. I know. They got guns and they have to restrict access. But, you know, I went to Howard, right down the street from Morgan State. And first, this shooting is really particularly sad because so much of my collegiate career involved Morgan State. And I just love the people at Morgan State. But to that end, I think both Morgan State and Howard and a lot of HBCUs have to be considerably more nuanced in what they do to not only be a part of the community, but to be inviting to the community while also safe to the students. Because the thing we don't talk about, if we're being honest about a lot of HBCUs, particularly at Howard, is when I was there was a rift between the students and people in the community, because a lot of people who would go to Howard were either silver spoon or did not understand that they were moving into a community where people already lived. And even though everyone's Black, the reality is there are some class things at play, there are educational issues at play, and there are community, especially in DC, gentrification issues. So I say that to say people should be safe on campus, and there should be a way to keep them safe. But I think both Howard, Morgan, and all other HBCUs would be tone deaf if they didn't do that in a way that was still inviting to the community, because while these are bastions of Black education, they can't ostracize Black people in the communities around them. So how you toe that balance, I don't know. I mean, it's not for me to decide at Morgan State, but I do think that in erecting a wall, it needs to not further, you know, alienate people in the Baltimore community. Morgan State still needs to be a jewel in the community for the community. And I don't know how you do that in this instance, but I think that needs to be top of mind so that you can accomplish the goals of keeping students safe, but also keeping the community integrated with the university.
Let's go to Atlanta with a fire officer who tased a 62-year-old black man who died, that remember was over a traffic ticket causing his death, is appealing his termination. Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shearbaum said Officer Kieran Kimbrough did not follow department procedure on August 10th when he did not wait until a supervisor arrived to arrest Johnny Holman Sr. The chief fired Kimbrough after internal investigation. Kimbrough's termination comes days before his body cam video of interactions with Holman is to be released. An autopsy determined that Holman's death was a homicide. The medical examiner also found that heart disease also contributed to his death. No shock, you have this officer who is appealing his firing. Well, that often happens. That's what we see that. All right, y'all. Let me go to a quick break. We'll be right back on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
On a next A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we meet Ricky Fairley. She was given a death sentence by her doctor 11 years ago. But for Ricky, giving up was not an option. She declared war on her disease, turned her entire life upside down, and won the battle.
I know that God left me here to do this work. And when you talk about faith, faith is what got me through. I mean, I had to relinquish my faith and give my life to God and say, okay, God, what have you got for me? And He gave me my purpose. And that's why I'm here.
Her amazing story of strength, balance, and survival here on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie on Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm Devon Frank.
I'm Dr. Robin B., pharmacist and fitness coach, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, The war continues in Israel, between Israel and Hamas. You have Israel saying that the folks who live in Gaza, 1.1 million people should leave Gaza. A lot of people saying, wait a minute, this is going to cause even more problems, saying that how do you just move 1 million people out of the way? President Joe Biden gave a speech today in Philadelphia where he did talk about what is happening there in the Middle East. Check this out. All right, give me 1 second. We're pulling it up. Here we go.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be almost home. Hey, guys, I live in Delaware, okay? And by the way, I'm a big Pennsylvania guy, but you have an advantage in Philly. 1, I married a Philly girl. 2, you're between Scranton and Wilmington. You know, Scranton, you guys have no sense of humor, man. Look, Ryan, thanks for that introduction. I really mean it. And before I get started, I want to acknowledge 2 brave police officers on a serious note were shot last night. 1 was killed at the Philadelphia airport. I talked to the chief and the mayor about this. They put their lives on the line to protect this community. We owe them a debt of gratitude, and we're praying for them and for their families today. I also want to say a word about the situation in Israel. The more we learned about the attack, the more horrifying it becomes. More than 1,000 innocent lives lost, including at least 27 Americans. These guys make Al-Qaeda look pure. They're pure evil. As I said from the beginning, the United States, make no mistake about it, stands with Israel. The United States stands with Israel. Secretary of State Blinken was in Israel yesterday, and Secretary of Defense Austin is there today. We're making sure Israel has what it needs to defend itself and respond to these attacks. It's also a priority for me to urgently address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. At my direction, our teams are working in the region, including communicating directly with the governments of Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and other Arab nations, and the United Nations to surge support and humanitarian consequences for Hamas attack to help Israel. You know, we can't lose sight of the fact that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians had nothing to do with Hamas and Hamas's appalling attacks, and they're suffering as a result as well. This morning, I spoke with the family members of all those Americans who are still unaccounted for on a Zoom call for about an hour and 10, 15 minutes. They're going through agony, not knowing what the status of their sons, daughters, husbands, wives, children are. You know, it's gut-wrenching. I assured them my personal commitment to do everything possible to return every missing American to their families. We're working round the clock to secure the release.
So, Michael, I want to go to you. Michael, I'll start with you first. This is, it's interesting watching all of these different things unfold. One, I saw a post earlier that I thought was kind of interesting. Give me 1 second. I want to mention this, where Axios had this story that the State Department has said there's certain things that cannot. So here it is. It says, Scoop, this is a senior foreign correspondent for HuffPost. Hours after Israel ordered an exodus in Gaza, State Department officials circulated internal warnings against 3 phrases: de-escalation, ceasefire, end to violence, bloodshed, restoring calm. Why in the hell would we want not those things discussed?
So I'm not certain why. I know we have multiple things taking place at the same time, okay? I'm glad President Joe Biden talked about the humanitarian crisis going on in Gaza because, to be quite frank with you, from looking at mainstream media, it appears they value the lives of Israelis more than they value the lives of the 2.2 million Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip. And they are living under, like, segregation-like conditions or oppression coming from Israel, okay? You have Israel dropping leaflets into Gaza saying for 1 million Palestinians to leave Gaza. But they really don't have anywhere to go for 1 million of them to leave. Even though some of them are trying to leave, they're trying to go south. They really don't have anywhere for 1 million to go. This is, I was talking to somebody earlier today about this. This looks like this is about to be another Crusades, which was started out in 1096 AD between the Christians and the Muslims, okay, over control of what they call the Holy Land in Jerusalem. This is about to be a bloodshed. Now, Joe Biden and, quite frankly, the Biden administration, I think, got criticism early on by not having a full-throated distinction between the 2.2 million Palestinians who are being oppressed and Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. And what I mean by that is so much attention was on Hamas attacking Israel, but what was lacking was a history for about the past 56 years between Israel and the Palestinians, okay? And you have a humanitarian crisis going on in the Gaza Strip. One UN person or ambassador has referred to the Gaza Strip as an open-air prison. So now more information is starting to come out about what's taking place in Gaza. But this is going to be tremendous bloodshed coming.
Yeah, and here's the deal, Matt. I mean, this is the thing for me that is, I just sort of sit here and I'm go, what are we talking about here? The reality is this here. Death is death. Yes. And if the whole point of a ceasefire, the whole point of ending the violence is to prevent death. And I think what's happening is, and I saw a story earlier to talk about this here, there is such a lust, a thirst for retribution. And I get it. 5,000 rockets come raining down. You want to do that, but that's gonna lead to response, and then another counter response, and the counter response, and the counter response. And what we're talking about here is we're talking about people who are being shipped out and moved out. Hamas has controlled Gaza since the election in 2006. There hasn't been one since. So this notion that all the Palestinians stand behind Hamas, you heard Biden say that, that's not true, but there is just this attitude of, hell, just open the gates of hell and unleash everything. And you talk about mutual self-destruction. Or sorry, mutual destruction. You fired me, I fired you, I fired back, you fired back, and then it never ends.
Yeah, and I think you asked a particularly astute question. Why are there internal emails saying we're not going to use terms like ceasefire and other things that seem to be the focus, should be the focus of anybody involved in policy or in defense, right, is staving off the number of lives that are lost. But I think if we look at it in the larger context of the fact that this particular conflict is the one that is most difficult for anyone in the United States of America to talk about for fear of being labeled one way or the other. Mainstream media, to Michael's point, is everything I've seen has been about nothing but the number of Israelis who have been lost. And you're exactly right. Death is death. It is abhorrent, no matter whose life is lost. But the reality is this geopolitical issue has hugely complicated origins and will continue to be complicated going forward. And even that lumping together of Palestinians with Hamas as though, those aren't distinct contingencies, one of which may not be completely supportive of the other, with Palestinians not being Hamas, is crucially important. But we don't find that level of nuance in this conversation. And what I always find particularly difficult in this instance is, he's the president, so naturally he has to talk about the number of Americans lost. But when you have thousands of people dying, it seems that if America is involved in this conflict, our primary focus should be how do we stop more people from dying, rather than purely being in lockstep with one of the combatants, with Israel. And I think, if that's the government's policy, then that's fine, but that should be overridden by all efforts to make sure that we don't have continued loss of life. So I think that the media has to be more truthful about how it's playing this and how it is portraying it. And I understand people's fear about not being anti-Semitic or any other kind of label. But if we don't talk about the issues and all of the attendant issues, honestly, then we can't meaningfully have conversations about how the United States can help make sure that people on both sides aren't losing their lives.
This is the homepage to HuffPost. Stunning U.S. memo, don't call for de-escalation in Gaza. Also, the Israeli president said all Gazans responsible for attack. I mean, seriously, I mean, how there are 2.2 million people in Gaza, Michael. How do you make the claim that, oh, they're all responsible for the attack? What this says, what it sounds like, oh, this just gives us license to destroy it all and everyone.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is. You know, our sister, Dr. Joy DeGruy, who wrote Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, she talks about cognitive dissonance, and she talks about for you to dehumanize another people, you have to put negative pejorative terms on these people to reduce their humanity, to then justify mistreating them. And this is what it appears is taking place now by trying to lump all of the 2.2 million Palestinians in who Israel has been oppressing for years. Let's make that clear. Okay, it's the same way African Americans were segregated and oppressed by white people here in this country. This is what's taking place now by the Israeli government. Now, I also make a distinction most of the time between what the government is doing and what the everyday citizens feel and what they're doing, because oftentimes, sometimes there's congruency, but oftentimes there's a disconnect between how the government is oppressing the people in another country and how the everyday citizens of that oppressive country, act. But this is how you set up a people for mass extermination. You put negative terms on them in the media to then justify and reduce the desire for other nations to come to their aid. And lastly, there has also been a call from reports I've seen. I think New York Times had an article about this. There has also been a call for all of the Arab, I can't remember if they said Arab nations or Muslims, however they put it, to rise up as well. Okay, and once again, this I think this is going to be another crusade, and it's going to be bloodier and more people dead than the previous 8 crusades.
All right, then. Matt, Michael, we appreciate y'all joining us on the show. Thank you so very much. Folks, that is it. Don't forget, Monday, I'll see you guys from Fredericksburg, Virginia for our next town hall. Elections here in Virginia, so we look forward to seeing you at Zion Church of Fredericksburg. Don't forget also, Louisiana folks, vote tomorrow. Your election takes place tomorrow. Those votes absolutely count. Sean Wilson, African-American, was running for governor. He is on the ballot, and so you should vote in that. Folks, again, I want you to have a fabulous, fabulous weekend. Last night, I got a chance to go see Dave Chappelle here at the Lincoln Theater in D.C., where he's shooting another Netflix special. Maxwell's in town as well. I was chatting with my homeboy earlier. And so a lot of different folks, a lot of things happening. Hope you have an absolute fabulous and great weekend. Tomorrow, I'm going to be hanging out. Y'all follow me on social media. I'm going to be going to the University of Maryland football game. Head coach Mike Loxley, his team is 5-1. Kevin Sumlin, the former head coach of Texas A&M, is on his staff as a co-offensive coordinator and assistant coach. I'm going to go out and hang out with him as well. And so got support. Listen, support what Dion is doing. Mike Loxley is doing a great job with the Maryland program as well. So got to show coach some love. So look for my post on social media. All right, y'all, that's it. I'll holler at y'all later.